Well, Hunter, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today on behalf of Awards Watch.
Thank you for having me.
I think first, what I wanted to talk about in regards to your episode, I found that one of the most affecting elements was its authenticity, especially when elaborating on the trans experience. And that can obviously be attributed to the fact that you served as a screenwriter here as well.
Mm.
So, how did you get involved with the writing process? Was it something Sam recommended, or did you come to him with your interest, or what did that look like?
Um, it's something that sort of happened kind of naturally in a way, partially due to the isolation of the pandemic, and that I was frantically searching for things to occupy myself with, one of which became playing around with screenwriting. And Sam and I were talking on the phone pretty frequently, and that initially ended up turning into like this movie idea that we kind of were writing about for a little bit, and then as he was missing, as we were all missing production in Euphoria after getting cut off like 3 days before we were supposed to start season 2, he began writing these special in between episodes that he thought could potentially be made under the restrictions of COVID. And so that that started with Rue's episode at first, and as our phone calls kind of kept up, we started talking about Jules again. I think that coincided with Jules randomly trending on Twitter for like being the villain of the show, which I know pissed us both off, and catalyzed a few riffs just on where she's at as a character, and eventually those conversations just sort of started turning into an episode, and I just remember him saying like, yo, you're kind of writing like dialogue right now, like do you just want to write this with me? And I was like, absolutely, yes, I do. And because I mean he taught me how to act, and I felt confident that he could usher me through the writing process as well. And we kind of jumped into it, and within a week I think we had our first draft.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love, like you said, how, when people were thinking Jules is the villain, that this really gave her the opportunity to share her side of the story and
Mm.
really show, what it's like to fully love Rue. Like that it's not all, because we get to hear everything
Yeah.
about her, but I like
Yeah.
so when you're giving, your voice to Jules, how much of your own life experience bleeds into this characterization, either in your acting or your writing? And, like, where's the difference between where Hunter begins and Jules begins?
Yeah. I mean, frankly, sometimes it feels a little blurry, less so with the actual like events happening in her life. I think we had pretty different experiences in high school. However, um themes and like ideas that she's tackling in her mind, I definitely channeled things that I was working through as someone who was freshly transitioned at the time into her, who's a 17-year-old girl. Um, and and I mean, uh, even coming into the show, there was always the prerequisite of the Jules that Sam had created before I was attached. But since then, it's really just become a consistent sort of mixing and like weaving the two of us together. Because in a lot of ways, Jules is a part of Sam, and I've also been able to weave parts of me in there, like for example in the episode, there's this line about the ocean and comparing the ocean to a kind of beauty that I would like to, or that Jules would like to inhabit, that's beyond what she's been handed, either before she transitioned or after. And that's something I definitely was thinking about at the time, and wrestling with, and it's still something I wrestle with. So I mean, there's like a myriad of topics I feel like we kind of weave through in the episode, but that's one of them for sure.
Yeah, kind of touching on those topics. What do you hope to accomplish with advancing trans representation in entertainment, kind of through this work and work elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, at this point, I mean, it's definitely better, I think, than it was like even 3 years ago. Like I remember when Pose started coming out and being like flabbergasted that that like the industry like greenlighted that, and so excited to witness like an entirely trans lead of cast. It's and who are all brilliant, and I've had the pleasure of meeting now, uh um and you know, other characters who, you know, are somewhere on the spectrum of gender being implanted in other narratives that are maybe less overall about transness. So like those things have started happening. It still feels pretty recent. But honestly, I think we're all just trying to figure out how to exist in like Hollywood spaces still at the moment, and trying to weasel our way into the spaces that we want to be in. And that's going to take a minute, I think. But ultimately, I'm liking where it's heading. I would love it to speed up. There are still so many trans narratives that I'm looking forward to seeing in the future that have not received enough light, if any, so far, in my opinion. So yeah.
That's awesome. Kind of like how you mentioned the Pose casting crew. Are
Mhm.
they or other trans creatives really responsible for inspiring you as you know, progress in your acting and writing?
100%. I mean, yeah, I can confidently say the entire cast of Pose. Like, I remember watching the first season when it first came out, and I was like 18 or 19, and just like weeping every episode because it was so surreal. Like I grew up watching American Horror Story in high school, which Ryan Murphy did, and I loved that show. And then to see, and I thought it was like really like well done. Obviously, like it has budget. It's like it's Ryan Murphy, you know, and is like well made, and then to see trans people put in the same light, telling like their own stories with people who or actors who can attribute their own experiences to the actual experiences they're portraying. It was like mind-blowing. And like it's one of the craziest feelings, I think, as far as like being exposed to new media, especially as a person from a marginalized community. It's really trippy, and in the best way. um so yeah, wait, did I answer the question?
Yeah, and if there were any other trans creatives aside from outside of Pose
Oh,
who inspired you?
100%. I mean, there are so many trans artists I admire. Off the top of my head, Arca is one of my favorites, not only just as an insanely genius, talented musician, but as like, I mean, I don't know if she identifies as this, but like a philosopher, kind of. Like I really love the way she theorizes um theorizes gender and sexuality and kind of doesn't give a fuck in the best, most lovable way that I find really encouraging when I feel like I'm caring a little too much about, being a binary trans woman and figuring out how that works and alongside a relatively fluid sense of gender and performing that for my job. It gets complicated. So I love referencing her and her work just as a sort of place to remind myself of like, oh, like this is someone I want to be like. Same thing with like a Noni or Juliana Huxtable or like musicians like Koi Dash, or Noni's a musician as well, or Davia Spain, who all have incredible creative visions and taste and frequencies. Go Graham, her work is incredible. I mean, yeah, I could go on, but
Oh, I love that. I love how passionate you are, because I think that your character and Euphoria are really doing a lot to bring this conversation more into the mainstream. And I think that it helps uplift everyone else in the community too.
thank you.
Yeah, kind of switching topics a little bit. So could you tell us anything about, the future of Jules for season 2 and kind of how this may lead into any potential storylines?
The
This
Jules
special.
episode.
Mhm.
What can I not get in trouble for saying? uh, um, I think it left off at a really tender moment with Rue and Jules. I really love that scene. As far as kind of how complicated it is and like and in the tension, but also the kind of extreme vulnerability, not necessarily like physically, but just that they they don't have their walls up by the end of that scene. They're being emotional with each other, which I take as a sign of hope for them, just as far as maintaining some sort of beautiful connection that they were able to find in season 1. So that's my hope, and we'll have to see.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And then outside of season 2, are there any other projects you're most interested in pursuing aside from Euphoria?
Yes, I've been looking ever since season 1 ended. I've been looking at things, and there have been a few that I think I felt cautious to, just because Euphoria was my first project, cautious to jump into anything too fast that gets offered, and really one, just knowing like what I want to do versus like being like oh, another project, like yes, like let me keep going, and really thinking about like what my next character that I inhabit will like do for me personally, just because like I mean, at least as an actor, I've learned that I really have to subsume in whatever I'm working on, and the character, and that ultimately that affects me deeply, me, Hunter, as a human being. And yeah, I want to be cautious with that, and for good reason. And I found a couple of things that I'm really excited about. Um, and also just opportunities outside of acting. I'm still looking into, searching for, working on my own. That I'm also really excited for, and also can't necessarily delve into at the moment, but things are coming. Yes.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, I'm so happy for you. I wish
Thank,
you the best throughout the rest of this campaign and for
thank
season 2.